lifelong interest in transportation. My father was a streetcar motorman in Philadelphia. He went to work with his shoes shine, his uniform was pressed. He looked better than any big wheel I've ever had. He was just an ordinary person. He set a standard for me. When you do something, you better do it right. We're talking about a very important event, the unification of the United States by rail. At Promontory Summit in Utah on May 10, 1869, Central Pacific Locomotive number 60 met up with Central Pacific, or actually Union Pacific, Central Pacific Locomotive number 60 met up with Union Pacific number 119.
Ken, you might want to speak up just a little bit.
Right, the Promontory Summit in Utah was a very important event. Two locomotives met, and this was significant in our nation. The Civil War had ended, and basically this was a unifying point, one of the unifying points that actually pulled the United States back together. Before that railroad, before those two railroads connected, it would take about 6 months to get goods from the East Coast over to the West Coast. With the completion of the railroad, it took it down to 6 days. The cost reduction was immense, and it put the United States on a real track for getting things done. Remember, the Civil War divided the country. This was a significant fact in uniting the country. The Transcontinental Railroad connected regional markets into the national economy. Before it was completed, a manufacturer in eastern Pennsylvania would have a tough time getting goods to the west, and the cost would be astronomical. So it meant quite a bit of difference. It made a difference. And the role of railroads in the country has been very important. Now, this was built at a cost, because it did cost the environment, and the Chinese, there were about 20,000 Chinese labor. They did a lot of the force, and they were basically paid less than their counterparts who were United States citizens. The completion of that railroad symbolized a new period of unity. It was one of the most important events after the divisive Civil War to bring this country together again. Economically, it became the foundation for the United States to emerge as a global industrial power. So the completion of that railroad created a faster, reliable system that accelerated the development of the Western expansion. Now, another thing to note is that the Indians suffered greatly during this expansion. So that's a part that we don't like to talk about too much, but I have to mention it because it's part of history. So the Indians paid a price, and the Chinese laborers were really the foundation for building that transcontinental railroad. So we know a lot of the people who really made a difference here. It acted as a bridge, allowing raw materials, finished goods, and all kinds of products to go across the country. And it symbolized the physical unification of the United States after a horrific war. Basically, rail transportation is very important. It's been important. We won 2 wars, World War I and World War II, because at that time we had the world's best transportation system. So basically it made a dramatic difference in the United States. Now, after World War II, when General Eisenhower, when he was with the troops in Germany, he realized that Germany had these autobahns, these huge highway networks. So when he came back to the States and peace began, we had the beginning of the national interstate highway system. And there's benefits from this system, but it's like you owning a store, you pay for all your merchandise, but your competitor gets a store built by the United States government, taxpayers, us, and gets it stocked by the United States government. So you can see the difference. So railroads have a tough time, and it's important that we, as citizens, recognize the value of railroads and do our best to basically make it known to governmental people that, hey, don't forget about the railroads. Let's keep them because they're important. The growth of railroad lines was an economic benefit because railroads purchased rail, ties, rolling stock, locomotives. Montgomery Ward got its start, got its auto company start by using the rail system. So it had all kinds of economic events that basically made a dramatic difference for us. So there's 6 points here I want to make quite clear. Number one, it made the western part of the United States more important. And not only that, it unified. It was the major ingredient in unifying the United States after a horrific war. Two, it transported food crops from the west to the east coast and manufactured goods from eastern seaports out to the west. Three, it made travel more affordable. In the 1860s, if any of you were planning a trip from Corey to the west coast in California, that trip would have cost by stagecoach about $1,000. Today's money, that would be $20,000. It was a dramatic impact here. And it lowered the cost of goods by a very significant amount. Four, it made it possible for immigrants and people to spread across the country. Five, it did take a toll on the U.S. environment because we chopped up the land, we encroached on what had been wild areas, and certainly the Indian population suffered severely. The slaughter of native Indian Americans who had hunted buffalo was something we can't forget. Six, the Transcontinental Railroad became a symbol of America's growing industrial power. Remember we said we won 2 wars, 2 very significant wars. Railroads are not old-fashioned. Railroads are important. They're just as important today. In fact, they're more important because the country's growing. We want it to continue to grow. And also we want to get back into the business of building railroad cars and railroad locomotives. Now, our foreign competition is very real, and it's out there, and every day when you and I go to a grocery store, try to find a U.S.-made wrench. I haven't been able to find it. I'll go walk up to the clerk and I'll say, "Sir, do you have a U.S. screwdriver?" And he says to me, "Are you nuts? We don't build anything in the United States." Mind you, the storekeeper's saying that to me, okay? Railroads have a golden opportunity. One of the things that's neat is Union Pacific. I just happened to accidentally have a book on the Union Pacific Railroad. But this is like this railroad company, you know, they're trying to merge with Norfolk Southern, and the government authorities have rejected the first go around. I think it will eventually get approved, but the politicians like to be able to say, you know, hey, answer some more questions. But Union Pacific has done an amazing job in a very difficult environment. When you look at that Big Boy, and I know most of you know that Big Boy is coming through Erie County. It's going to be stopping at Northeast Rail Museum, Northeast Pennsylvania, and then it goes further east. It stops in Ripley. I don't know, the times are short in certain places, but recognizing that it's on Norfolk Southern Railroad property, but Norfolk Southern runs a tight ship, and so does Union Pacific. I'm hopeful that that merger will get approved. The bottom line is, it's important for us to remember our heritage, because the railroads built this country. None of us would be here today if it wasn't for the railroads. We've won wars with them, and we're in an economic war now, you know? And it's important for us to rethink where we're going. We've got to change our strategy, because tomorrow's children, I'd hate to have them speaking Chinese, we have got to wake up to the fact that, let's look at what we have in this country. We're a very special country. We've been fortunate. Our generation sometimes has been wasteful. When I look at railroads, I look at something that's exciting. And incidentally, when I graduated from Drexel Institute of Technology, which is Drexel University today, that night of graduation, I was on the Northern Express from Philadelphia to Erie. My first job was in Erie, and I had a room lined up at that time for $1 a day. I mean, this was incredible. But the bottom line is, if that train hadn't been in place, I would have never been able to get here. Somebody might say, well, gee, that would have been better for us. But anyway, the bottom line is, railroads meant a lot. My father set an example for me. If you do something, you do it right. And I think that's the heritage. And it's a pleasure to be in a building where these volunteers have spent thousands upon thousands of hours to recreate that climax locomotive. The community, the region, the country needs to be very grateful for pioneers like these individuals here who have taken the time. Now at this point, do you have any questions? I'll try to help you.
It's funny because my sisters and I were just talking about traveling in today's world and how there's so many accidents with airlines. She says to me, I just wish that it was more affordable, that they would have more rails in one of the different cities that would go like easier. Or just, you could just hop on and go. It would be so, or whatever. Yeah, they do it now.
I can remember growing up looking at an map, and it had a rail map of the United States. And I mean, you look at the eastern United States, and it's just everywhere. And I went to my mom. She was probably third or fourth grade. And I go, why haven't they drawn in all the lines out here?
It would be amazing if it could do
Well,
that.
I think we have to change what we're doing, because you're right. Every time you turn on the national news, there's an airline crash, there's a hijacking by air. I mean, it's just on and on and on. And it's pretty serious stuff. Wouldn't you think the powers to be would decide, hey, let's change course here? Basically, let me give you an example of somebody going to change course. When I was in 8th grade, I was called to the office. I was very quiet. The assistant principal proceeded to tell me he was my father. Ken, we like you, but you don't have the brains to get higher education. I was written off in 8th grade. When I was on my walk at home that afternoon, I wasn't smart. I never thought about college before. Somebody told me I can't do something. At the dinner table, my dad he was getting ready to move on. He was all dressed up. He had a uniform which was better than any big wheel that I ever met. He set a standard. And he said, I hate to tell you folks this, but my job may end shortly. The company had been taken over by National City Lines, which was a consortium of Firestone Tire and Bubble, Atlantic Litchfield, and General Motors. So as the trolley lines were converted to bus operation, the bus garages would have General Motors buses, just accidentally with Firestone tires fueled by Atlantic Litchfield. All just by accident, But anyway, so at that point, I was really scared. The next morning, because I was so quiet, I got into the office, wasn't paying attention. I got the papers to sign up for college prep courses. Got it. And in 9th grade, I got Latin. The teacher, her name was Miss Cook. She went up and down the rows. If you knew the answer, you got an A. If you didn't, you got an F. Wow, I had to really work. And I did. I learned English with Latin. So the bottom line is, I graduated 9th out of 141. People should never be treated as scrap. So, as I say, I came up here by train. I'm influenced by my parents. They did a good job. And the people along the way. But I basically, public transit, that's how I got to school. And Drexel is a school where you would work 6 months and go to school. That's going back. I had to raise $740 for my first year. And I did, at the end of 11th grade, I basically got a job in Northeastern Philadelphia. The job interview involved I had to take the trolley, and then another subway elevated, and then another trolley to get to work. It took me an hour and a half to get to work. When I interviewed with the company, actually with the company president, and I said to the company president, I said, sir, there might be times when I be late. Whatever time I'm late, it will be because of the trolley, the subway, and the other trolley. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Whenever I'm late during the day, getting here, I will always make up that time at the end of the day. And he thought for a moment, he says, Ken, you're honest enough to just tell me that. As long as you do that, nobody's going to say a word. And so there were times I was late, but I was there a month. And at the end of that month, the Monday morning, I'm ready to punch the time clock one time, and then the secretary comes running out, Ken, you will no longer punch the time clock. You proved to us honesty and integrity. You know, you will not punch the time clock. So I owe that public transit